You've been thinking a lot about the nature of identity in this particular cultural moment and how that has evolved, how it's changed over the centuries. So, what are we talking about when we're talking about identity, and how does sort of an understanding of our intellectual history help us to, reconceptualize the practices in our society today?
So I think increasingly now, I argue in Self-Made that our fundamental sense of identity, it's a little bit about political community, but primarily about trying to work out what exactly makes us us. And when I started writing Self-Made, I wanted to do something narrower and more specific, which is the history of this idea of self-creation, the self-made man, the entrepreneur, the dandy who lives life as art. But increasingly, I found that this kind of distinctly early modern and modern cultural shift about what makes us us became more at the heart of the project, even as these paradigmatic self makers kind of exemplified it. And I think increasingly, from roughly the Renaissance to the present day, although that's a large swath of history, we've seen a shift in thinking of our what you might call our circumstances, our facticity, our ourselves as social selves, as increasingly being seen as arbitrary or contingent. These are not the things that make us us. What makes us increasingly comes to be understood as our hopes, our dreams, and ultimately our desires, that our affective states are the most accurate window into who we quote unquote really are. And so I think particularly in this sort of post-internet iteration of that cultural moment, where more and more of us are not only disembodied sort of physically, but also isolated, fractured, alienated from wider communities, we become all the more insistent that we are who we want to be, and that these sort of other elements of our communal life are sort of at best irrelevant or something to be transcended, and at worst actively repressive, holding us back from who we really, or to use a word I don't really like, authentically are.